Hello, my friends. Welcome. I'm tired today, but I'm excited to talk to Jon. Off the last week. We're both busy taking care of things, but got a bunch of good questions. Gonna be hanging out for an hour and doing what we do. I'll go ahead and just bring Jon on right now. There he is. Now, hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hair wilding today. I like it.
I know it's been poofy lately.
You got that Einstein energy going in the laboratory making records.
I was just in Santa Barbara for the weekend and just got back, did notes on 6 songs. Niku made us breakfast, and now I'm here doing this. And then I got to get back to notes, and then I have an attended mix session, and I'm assistantless right now, so I've been picking up all the slack at the moment. So it's been a bit crazy.
Yeah, how has that been from having that void and having to do a lot more things than usual? What's that? I remember you and I were talking about it a little bit, and you've had an assistant for so long, taking care of so many things, and you're temporarily without one. Are you learning things about the process? Are you thinking about things differently?
Well, I'm about to. I have to bounce stems for a song that I'm about to do the Atmos for with Mike Miller, and I have to, Josh has that stuff covered. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe when I'm doing this, I'm going to think differently about this. I haven't done stems in over a decade, so maybe I'll do stems differently for Atmos, knowing that I'm doing them versus, hey, maybe I'm going to give myself more flexibility. Maybe I'll give myself too much flexibility. So I'm actually thinking about that right now. I don't know. It's more humbling. It's more just, all right, well, it's mind numbing, but it's also meditative to sit with something that you don't actually want to do and have to do it. It's like the idea of doing laundry and being present in the idea of doing laundry. It's like, it is what it is. I have to do laundry. I need clean clothes. Like, I need to bounce stems and I need to deliver files to labels or else I can't get paid. So without him around, I've had to do 2 albums worth of stems, a few singles, an EP, all full deliverables. I've been texting him like, hey, how do you even label this? Like, it's just so far from anything I've had to focus on. Had a bit of a run around this weekend. Normally, everybody that watches here knows that my girlfriend and I go to Santa Barbara pretty regularly to take breaks from the city. But this weekend, while I was up there, I got hit with a need to deliver something on Monday, which is yesterday. And I'm thinking to myself, it's 4th of July. Who's working? So call the producer. I'm like, hey, can I just do this Tuesday? Like, this feels absurd. He's like, let me call the remain nameless, the president of the record label, calls the label head, and the label head goes, I'll be working. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So Niku and I went to the State Street Apple store in Santa Barbara, and I treated myself to a new MacBook Pro that just so happens to be the only one in stock that was fully maxed out, which I got very lucky because I didn't want to buy an inadequate one just to make this happen. So I got very lucky. They had one in stock that was fully loaded with everything I needed, whatever the M1 Ultimate chip is and whatever. And
by the way, as an aside, I'm fully on my M1 and it is flying.
So I haven't obviously installed everything. So what I did, I don't know how I had the foresight to do this, but I took a screenshot of the TeamViewer login code for some reason, just in case something were to happen, and I texted it to myself. So thank God I did that. Granted,
preparation is everything. Preparation.
I don't even know exactly. That's why I'm telling the story. It's like, exactly. So I bought a brand new MacBook Pro to TeamViewer in to my computer at home to do this quick edit. It's for something very exciting, so I'm happy to do it. But once I got the computer, it took 3 hours. TeamViewer, for a 5-minute thing of work, because TeamViewer scrolling was being ridiculous, and Niku's Googling what the hell is happening. I can't figure out what's happening. This is way over my head. I would scroll on the trackpad, and it would just go to the top, and then to the bottom, and then to the left, to the right. 30 seconds later, it would stop. Every time I just tapped the thing, and then TeamViewer would kick me off every 5 minutes. So the minute I would actually get close to the edit, I would make the edit, save quick, and then it would kick me off. And then I bought the TeamViewer Pro account, which costs another $500 on top of the laptop cost, right? And then I it didn't fix it. So she found some like weird thing that I just didn't, and it's a wild experience to do a 5-minute piece of work, which was just add a post hook to a radio edit that we had taken out on the first version. It was a simple edit that would have taken 30 seconds and then bounce time. So like 5 minutes worth of work. And it costs a shit ton of money and a long time to do that. And that's what it takes to make things like this happen.
Yeah, and they'll hire you again because you got it done and it was on a holiday.
Yeah, I was quote unquote goated for this one, man.
Yeah,
so
yeah. That's quite, as we talk about a lot, it's the people who get hired and rehired. What's the Neil Gaiman thing? Like people get hired because they get hired, but people get rehired for very specific reasons. And one of the big ones is when somebody goes, "Hey, it's a holiday and you're not in town. Can you make this happen in the next few hours?" And you figure out how to do it, they hire you again.
Yeah. Now, if this was any other situation, Josh would have just done it from his computer or drove 20 minutes to the studio from his house and would have made it happen. And it would not have been any sort of stress at all for me. And that's just the name of the game right now. And I don't know how long that's going to be at the moment. And you know what? I did have, a friend offer to help. And I was just like, I'm going to just sort this on my own. Like I just wanted to figure it out. Also, you do this a lot and I ask you questions about this and I'm looking to figure out a way to be comfortable in somewhat remote working, meaning if there's a started mix that's close and I need to travel, I should be able to log in. Like I don't change my mix bus. So if I'm doing it through TeamViewer, my mix bus is the same. So I should be able to print this edit very simply. Or if someone wants a vocal up or someone just thinks something's not sitting quite right, I should be able to do that. I don't know how comfortable I'd be starting a new mix from scratch, from a distance. But like if someone really needed something, I could probably deliver on that. And then depending on the, level of the mix that's requested during the time, I either see if they can push back or, fly home, depending on, what the circumstance is, I guess. But it would be nice to have a mirrored setup on this laptop that's the same as my iMac Pro at home to some degree. And then I can do the note and then I can log in at home and send it through the mix bus. So I can still have my analog mix bus. Because that's the thing there's something about it that I just like better. I mean, this is a preference. This is a taste thing. It has nothing to do with if in the box is better than analog. That's how I've been mixing for so long. So there's some sort of flexibility and familiarity that I get from that. So I wouldn't want to mix without it if I didn't have to.
Man, there's a lot of things to jump off with that. There's one thing that on the Discord, which we just hit 1,000 people on the Discord, which is crazy. And it's a really great community. Obviously, always encouraging people to join there. It's a lot of giving. People don't go there to just ask for things. It's people giving ideas and sharing things. One of the things that Kian shared is that he has, I think I can't remember, it was Pro Q3 and maybe Saturn, through doing quite a bit of like, I don't know, metering or whatever, figured out the curves and the distortion and the overtones that were coming out of his analog mix bus, and having a substitute if he ever needed to quickly run stems or something like that. He actually has a plug-in chain that is very, very, very close to his mix bus, the EQ curve, and it's just an interesting thing. And he actually shared it on there very kindly with people. But interesting to think about as you decide to do more remote things, what things you might try to make happen. For a long time I had, before laptops got powerful enough really to run like full Pro Tools sessions that were productions and mixes where I wasn't mixing off stems. It was like many instances of auto-tune and lots of ozone and all that kind of stuff. I had a desktop system and then ended up getting a laptop with a completely parallel system. So a lot of plugins will let you have multiple computers, but some of them I had to buy 2 licenses for. So I did that for a while where I was mostly at home, mostly at my studio, but I would travel and I would have a laptop that had a parallel system, which was really good and worked really well.
I was going to ask you, how does that work for you traveling with multiple licenses? You have to travel with an iLock too.
Yep.
So I'm trying to think of how I would leave my iLock, because if I can't access the Pro Tools at my studio, then I can't run it through the mix bus.
Two licenses where I had to have it. I have two iLocks. I mean, that's what I used to have.
Two iLocks.
I think now my friend and collaborator a long time, Chris Wallace, has the other iLock, which has like, the only thing that's left on is like an auto-tune license and maybe one or two other little things. Because he and I were doing so much stuff together, we had parallel systems as well. And now I just have the one laptop because it's more than powerful enough. So even if I have a studio for 2 or 3 months, I'm just still running. I mean, the M1 is so fast and so good. Sick. And it's all up and running now. It took me a minute. Actually, the Discord was helpful with that too, with both picking the computer and figuring out how to get the UA stuff to work and Rosetta and what's compatible. It's all a bit annoying, but boy, is it fast and
cool
and great.
I'm going to have Josh set when he's back up and running remotely. I'm going to have him set the second computer up and figure out if I have to buy other licenses or whatever it takes, or or maybe if I have 2 licenses and he has one of them, like I'll take that one back and I'll buy him his own license or something like that as my assistant, and whatever that looks like, so I can have a parallel rig to some degree. I don't really use UAD, so I wouldn't worry about traveling with UAD. If I use something, it's one of those reverbs or a chorus thing that nobody else has, I would probably just commit that before I travel, just so I know I have that, which I do anyway. I tend to think of UAD as hardware because that piece is a hardware box, so it's almost like you're reliant on hardware. So I commit most UAD plugins that I use as if I'm committing a piece of analog gear anyway for that purpose.
I think someone in the chat will say it quickly, but I believe there's some native version of it now, and now they use. Now you can do it native, or they're going to, or something.
Right.
But there's some talk about that. But I've just never used them because I want to like open up and use my headphone jack on an airplane and edit vocals. And if I have UAD, I just can't do it.
I was just thinking about this, like traveling with the MacBook Pro and the AirPod Maxes. Like if I can't do notes on the AirPod Max, I think they sound so good. You're just Bluetoothing in notes while you're remotely tuned into your studio at home. That's so tight.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Now, if they can figure out the latency thing, I mean, that's probably an internet issue. And I don't have, I can't get fiber down here. I'd have to install a fiber line, which I was talking to my homie Raul about this. It's like, would it be worth the money to have that run? But it's a rental studio home situation, so it's not like I own the place. What would it cost to put an entire fiber line? It's not even in.
Do you have any idea what it costs? Is it?
No, I'm going to look into it. We were just talking about this a couple of days ago, just to see if it's worth it. Because with fiber, but then it would have to be fiber on the other line too to make it really seamless. Anyway, the internet issues are gonna cause the latency. As much as that scrolling thing, I know there's gonna be a workaround there. There's this thing called Smart Scroll that it installs into the system preferences of the computer, so you can adjust scroll speed on app dependent. So got that. It didn't fix it, but there's so much. There's so many parameters to look into that I didn't want to do it on the vacation. So I'm going to look into that this week. So basically, I just set up my remote setup where the scrolling is dependent on application. And even maybe bringing a second trackpad so that trackpad can be independent speed from the one built in or something like that dependent.
Well, I will say yet again, and it's not to just overplug it, but I bet folks on the Discord know what's up with this, because there's like super nerdy engineer computer people and studio builders and all kinds of. Maybe I'll ask and see. Maybe I have to come on there.
Yeah, I probably will for something like this, because honestly, it seems from this weekend, because even after Dale mastered this edit, I caught something that I messed up. Like I must have on scrolling crossfaded something weird on the vocalist, like a new featured vocalist edit. And I was like, no, I can't have that. You can even hear the quick dip in it. I was like, no. So I have to rebounce it. So just having access to be able to do that, I think it's a worthwhile investment of spending a few days to figure out what it's like, even if it's going to a coffee shop and doing notes from the coffee shop, even down the street from me, just to even practice what this workflow looks like.
There was somebody who asked a question about stems. HUD asked, how exactly do you print stems so that it sounds exactly like how the mix sounds, which is like kind of the classic question is, how much do you're going through the mix bus, but you got individual stuff. Obviously, the reason the question is asked, this, but that, when you put everything together and things, the sum total of things go through the mix bus, the relationship between them, that's the glue, things stick together. So if you're bouncing individual stems, they will not hit the mix bus the same way. So when you then add the stems up, it doesn't quite add up.
It's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
It's nearly impossible to do. There's two ways to do it. I prefer to just bounce it all through the mix bus. and then I would make a new stem session and put the bounced final mix in the session and click in the stems accordingly to match the overall level. But that's if I was making a stem session, which I'm not. I'm just giving some, mostly for stems. You're sending it for live purposes, which people are going to do their own gain staging anyway. If they're gonna translate that to an ad mix on TV with it, it's going to be pretty damn close anyway for like listening through TV speakers and whatever. It's going to be very, very close. The old school way to do it would be to bounce it without the mix bus on, and then every time you wanted to use those stems, you'd have to turn the mix bus on, which is in the box circumstances, that's totally fine because you bounce it without it and you send someone a stem session with them on it. But that's not going to work if they're putting it into Logic or Ableton.
If they don't have the plugins or it's an old version from 5 years ago or whatever,
But I just bounce it through the mix bus, and it's pretty damn close. Like when you send, for me, when I get a mix, I want people to send their stems bounce through the mix bus. So when I put it in and I put the reference mix in and I A/B with the reference, it's pretty close.
Pretty close.
Like it's, that's all. I would just bounce everything.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to do that after this. I have to bounce them so I can do an Atmos mix this week, and I'm going to bounce it through the mix bus. That just is what it is.
Yeah, I definitely, I would say bounce through the mix bus. It is very important to understand what the purpose of stems generally is, and it's not to recreate your exact perfect mix in order to manipulate it. Presumably they would ask you to make an adjustment if they wanted a mixed version that was slightly different, but stems are generally for live, for remixes, for if they can't get a hold of you and they need something. And I guess there are ways to do it, I think, in Logic and Ableton and maybe Pro Tools now, where you can trigger, you can basically make the mix bus react to all of the tracks, but only have output from one of them. So, when the kick drum hits on the downbeat and the whole track squishes a little bit, you get that effect on the vocal and all the other tracks. But if
you can sidechain input. You can sidechain cue that if you want.
If you're using hardware, that's very difficult to do. And I literally have never had anybody complain that they don't add up perfectly or null or something like that. It's not, you don't need to worry about that, but definitely through the mix bus and making it sound close.
With hardware, the SSL compressor has that in the console built in, because people used to do that. They used to cue the sidechain input from the kick to re-emulate that. And a lot of hardware compressors do have a sidechain input that you could do that, but that's old school techniques, and that's not really happening as much.
And it would be just the compressor. You couldn't do that for the saturation, or you couldn't do that for the limiter necessarily, or whatever.
Exactly.
Things can get a little bit complicated. So you've been basically in doing everything, Mo. You're basically in everybody else's shoes right now, where no assistant, you're doing all the stems, are you doing prep, I assume, as well?
I got an attended mix today, and Alex Goose, my homie, is sending me stems right after this, and I have to prep it, and then him and the artist are coming in, and I'm going to prep it and then mix it. And normally, like, Josh would prep it while I'm talking to you, and then I would just start mixing it. So it's a little different. Honestly, it's more scheduling. It's like, I was actually thinking about it the other day, because I cook a lot, and thinking about cooking on electric stoves versus gas stoves. Like, I think about boiling water, not like, oh, damn, I don't have a gas stove. I think, okay, it's going to take me 11 minutes on the burner at the highest power output that I have to boil water. So before it's time to make rice, I start boiling the water 11 minutes before I know I have to start the rice to do the hour and a half plus rice process that I like to do, right? So I think about scheduling right now this week, like I'm cooking on an electric stove. It's a little bit slower, but if I plot it out, plan how the day is going to go, I know I can still get everything done, right? I was doing an album's worth of stems. It took me 2 days, and it was about an average of 60 minutes per song, because some of the songs were 90 minutes to do and some were 30, because they had, it was an acoustic song, had less stems, didn't take as much time. So you average out what you need to do. It's a little bit of math and it's a little bit of planning. So it's not overly stressing me out. And like I said, it's just making me be extremely mindful with the process. I'm not cutting any corners. That's been the theme of Live with Matt Rad since you and I started, is there's no real shortcuts. There are shortcuts to do stems in the box, but having analog gear, I sit there and I record. And apparently there's also some sort of, script written to do that too, to send it out, make a new playlist, but then you're doing the whole bounce of the song every time. Sometimes an effects stem only has 2 places where that, crash cymbal hits. Why would I want to run a 3-minute stem for, 5 seconds of information? So you punch in, you punch out, and you consolidate later, right? So I'm imagining there are ways. Now, granted, if you want to go to dinner and run a script and it's going to bounce a whole song of synth while you're at dinner, that's fine. I understand doing that. But I'm, just figuring out shortcuts and ways to do it without having a real shortcut.
Yeah. And
I don't mind it. I honestly just don't mind it. Like, I'm not overworked right now, where it's not so much I can't handle it. I don't remember who I was talking to about this, but there was a time where I was doing, 10, 15 songs a week. And I'm just not living that life right now. For whatever reason, like mixers go through phases of being super busy and overworked and not, and I'm at like a pretty steady mix or so a day. And that's manageable to do these things. Like if I mix a song, I can do a song of stems in the same day. If I, have, like I did 6 songs of notes today, I can still mix a song from scratch today as well. Like that's not so overworked or I'm so stressed about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I also find that bouncing stems and doing revisions and doing versions is, like you said, sort of meditative, and I can also get other things done while I'm doing it. There's always an email to respond to, or clips for this stuff to go through and make decisions on, or like there's always little things so you can stack up the productivity pretty well, I think. Yeah,
just trying to plan the day. That's all. I mean, Spider used to say this in some of our conversations nights, like for engineers that weren't super busy, and like we're in the context of practice versus getting hired. It's like, well, fill the schedule, right? So you have X amount of days you want to work, X amount of days you want to prioritize your personal life and living. So fill that schedule. If you're not booked with work, fill the schedule with some pro bono work to get better. Right now, I'm just, filling the schedule with stuff that has to get done. And you know what? If people aren't asking for stems, I'm going to put them off for deliverables until Josh is ready to log in and do it for me. But until he gives me the word that he's ready, because he's going through a lot right now, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to do things that aren't asked for. He does that a lot. He preemptively does deliverables. So when someone asks, it's very rare that we actually have to do them. And that's the best part of having an engineer that works for you full time, is that when someone emails, hey, can we get stems for that thing? He responds in less than 5 minutes with a link. Versus for me, I'd have to say, all right, give me an hour. Like, I'll get that to you in an hour. Versus the professionalism of, oh, we already did it, And I think that's where I'll lack for the next week or two while we're going through this this down spell. But no one's gonna not hire me because they can't get stems within an hour. If they do, then fuck that person, and I don't care.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because it's sort of back to what you're talking about before with doing something on a holiday. Is if you can be the person that just makes people's life easier. Where it's like, hey, we need this thing right now. And you're like, boom, here's a link. That's it's a leg up. It's not necessary, but it's a leg up.
We'll hopefully talk about this in the next week or two. Hopefully it's dropping as soon as they say because of this deliverable. I'm super stoked about this thing, right? We always come back to well, what's a priority? What am I afraid to lose, right? This is a gig I'm potentially more fearful to lose and to not step up to the plate in the 9th inning to finish this no matter where I am. Right. So there's going to be times where that's not going to happen. First of all, there's very few artists, I think, that even can deliver on a same week deliverable. Right. So there's something about you want to make these situations happen more than others. And then other people are going to be more lenient when you call them and say, hey, really, on 4th of July? It has to be a certain level of seriousness and anticipation and planning, right? There has to be some sort of marketing planning that's happening that you're aligned with. So if I mess up, that will throw off the deadline for a lot of moving parts. And that's something that I don't think everyone thinks about in the sense of delivering. We think about the music industry being so fast paced and everybody wants their thing now. It's not like a movie when the movie release date is announced a year out. So they have to hit that date. Music industry just hits you with it's coming out Friday or Tuesday night or tomorrow or in an hour from now. And we have to kind of adapt to that. And I like that. We've talked about that a bunch on this. I thrive on that. So
Me too.
if I was home this weekend, and I was at a dinner, for example, and they asked for it, like, I'd leave that dinner to get this done, right? Like there's going to be no pushback from that having to happen. So it was the same thing. I just had to buy a laptop instead. You know what's funny? I traveled with my iPad, again, anticipating this might happen. But TeamViewer on the iPad, because it's touchscreen, like my finger wouldn't even open Pro Tools. It would open like Notepad above it or the thing below it. Like I couldn't even open it. So I even tried to just log in on the iPad to do this, and it just wouldn't even work.
Yeah. You touched on something there that I think is really important too, which is, you did exactly what I think anybody should do, which is somebody goes, hey, we need something on the 4th of July. And you're like, really? Is this one of those music industry things? Like, can I just do it Tuesday? And you call the person that is an intermediary that you're close with, that you go, hey, is this really a thing? And then you get the word back, yeah, it's really a thing. And then you go, boom, I'm going to do it. Understanding how people set deadlines, what people mean when they say things. I mean, this is essentially our job as producer, mixer, finisher, people. I start early in the process oftentimes, but people later in the process is translating notes. It's a version of translating notes. So when somebody says, hey, the chorus needs more energy, you always go like, well, come on, like, tell me what to do. But the reality is you're the person who's supposed to go, cool, I have 45 tools to bring more energy to a chorus. I know this song. I know what this artist is after. I know that more energy means the doubles and the vocals need to come up versus more energy means it needs more guitar versus more energy means it needs more high end, or the downbeat needs to be bigger, whatever. That's your job to figure out, just like it's your job to figure out, hey, we need this tomorrow. It's 4th of July, but we need it tomorrow. And you just go, do you really need it tomorrow? And then you figure out, okay, how to translate that into, okay, they actually need it tomorrow, and you get it done.
Yeah,
or you don't, like, or you get a couple.
Or so you still have to make a decision, but you also don't want to come off resistant too. It just so happened that it was on.
That's why
Saturday.
You call your friend instead of the head of the label, going, "Do I really need to do this, head of the label?" Because the head of the label wants to hear yes, and then you get it done.
Yeah, he texted me and he was like, or audio message. He was like, so sorry. Like, I know you're on vacation. Like, I wouldn't ask this otherwise. And I literally just sat down to dinner with Niku on Saturday night. We eat early. It was like 5:30. It wasn't like a crazy late night. We like to eat early so we can eat for like 3 hours and overeat and, still have time before sleep. And I just picked up the phone. I was like, hey, like, how is this for real? Like, can't we do this Tuesday? And not trying to be resistant. I mean, that's the key to this, is you want to open up a dialogue of open communication, but you also don't want to seem resistant. Like, you don't want to do it. And there's a needle that has to be thread there. So you're not like, dude, really? The tone of voice matters. Like, still be open, but question, like, for real? Like, do I really have to do this now? But no, I want to. And if I have to, I will get it done. I think that's the lesson to be learned here, is having some sort of openness and lack of resistance to
how to push
question.
Back.
Yeah.
How to push back is an incredibly important skill. And I was working earlier today with an artist. We're starting to really bond, and I think we're going to make a lot of records together. We've had a few sessions, we've had a few hangs, and really on that, like, okay, we've started to figure out what he's after. He feels like I understand him. We're working on these things, and it's like, and I'm feeling the vibe. We're playing records for each other. And at one point I was on this song that feels really special and really important that he's started writing and sent me a voice note or a simple version of it. And I was like, all right, here's my couple of thoughts. And by the way, I'm just giving thoughts on things, and this is taking my stadium pop brain and putting it on your very interesting, cool song, but that it has a thing. My ideas might work. They might not. I might fight for them, but ultimately this is you. So how you communicate the pushback of, like, you wrote this great thing, here's how I want to change it. Yeah. How to communicate that is really the skill set. And whether it's pushback on a lyric or a melody or it's on a deadline or whatever it is, that's an incredibly important skill set to have.
I even on this note, no, granted, I did this before. So I had done these edits before going away for the weekend. Basically, it's a song that's already out that's doing really well, and they some awesome artists like jumped on it, and so they
got the feature.
I got the feature. So I already did the edits, but then even the day before leaving, I woke up like with an idea of another 2 edits. I came up with 2 more edits just as an option. I'm not asking them to like pay me more for this. Like I just was like, oh shit, like what if it had this type of like pop arrangement? So I like did 2 more arrangements, and I wrote them a nice, letter on the group thread with everybody on it, like why I did this, why I felt like these versions are worth hearing. And they were just like, thanks for these, man, that's great. And then when they asked me for the deliverables, we want all 4 of them, but can you add a 5th? And that's when I was like, fuck, I'm in Santa Barbara. So I had 4 edits done, but then they wanted to hear 1 more, which I think is the one. It's actually pretty clear that the one they asked for in Santa Barbara is the best version of the song. So as the mixer, I'll admit that like all of the other ones, including the 2 that I did, probably weren't the best. And that's, and you know what? Another thing to take away from this, just for myself, is that now I can go to Santa Barbara more regularly and I can make this happen. And, I could probably do some sort of, no, granted the mix was approved, so there was no like sonic notes to do, but if I had to do that on Air Maxes, there it's fine. I can do some notes. Like I can do them on AirPods probably, like to some degree.
Well, it sounds like
this is a very positive.
Yeah, it sounds great, and it's you. Again, back to preparation. You have the tools and the emergency, the break glass in case of emergency options, and you figure out how to make it happen. And if you can do that, then you can get hired forever. So.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
By the way, where are you?
I'm in Nashville.
Nashville? Yeah. Still in Nashville.
Been here a week or 2. I don't know how long I've been here. A couple weeks, leaving a week. Been writing, been producing. It's been great. It's been hot as fuck. But fortunately the town has air conditioning. So, it's been good. I, hung with your boy, Tyler Johnson, the other day. Love him.
Just going to ask.
I'm gonna see him tonight.
Your first time hanging?
First time properly hanging. Had a very nice time. Hung with some other music people as well. Had a really lovely time. Love that guy. I haven't formally asked him, but I want to have him on one of these. Maybe he'll watch this, and but I'm going to see him tonight, so I'll talk to him about it. He's amazing.
I think he'd be a great addition for an every now and then jump on. See where he's at. He's he's definitely the collaborator that I go to for most career perspective and advice.
We had like 3 hours of conversation the other day that could have been 3 hours on a live that people would have loved. I mean, obviously there are things you talk about offline in this process that you keep private, and there's confidential things and whatever. But he's a great dude, great brain, obviously a mega talent. I feel I should thank you for connecting us, because my connection to you is how we got connected. But yeah, great dude.
No need to thank.
But Nashville's great. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be coming back here more. I really like it here.
Cool.
There were a bunch of good questions. I don't know if we want to talk about this, and maybe we can go gloss over it. I don't know how interesting a topic it is, but I think people are interested. I've heard a lot of people ask me about the new Drake album. More, I think, creatively than, say, sonically or mixing. Obviously, Beyonce also put out a dance song. It's like, it seems like there's this interesting dance house thing that, at least thus far, Drake and Beyonce, at least with one song, and Drake with a whole album, have done. And obviously, there's other dance and hip hop things, dance and R&B things that have happened. But it is interesting to hear a whole project that doesn't really feel like what you think of as a Drake album, and a Beyonce song that is, has the Big Frida sample on it, and so there's some like house energy thing there. I don't know. You got any thoughts on any of it? Have you listened to it much?
I haven't as much as I've actually wanted to, but what I have heard is so good. I haven't heard the Beyonce, specifically talking about Drake. And I've heard a lot of people discuss what you're talking about, and I think it's tight. I think, culturally speaking, it's extremely tight to kind of like have unexpected artist that does a certain thing kind of claim and take stance in a new genre and do it effortlessly, very cool, just different enough, and to not give us what we expect from him, as well as give us Jimmy Cooks, which is on the charts and still doing his thing, right? So that's what someone brought up, and I was like, I love that. Like, you still get what you want from him, so then that'll just be a top 10 record for like the next, rest of the year, because it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
And then he gives us other bangers in a whole nother genre that he's exploring, that he's bringing in legitimate forces behind. Like, I forgot, I looked up the guy who co-mixed it with 40, and that dude is like, one of the best house mixers, right? So sonically speaking, they enlisted an expert in that field. I forget his name, and I feel really badly that he's got a studio in Vegas, and he does, like, if you look up his credits, it's like, oh, he did that. You're like, oh, that's one of the best sounding electronic records. And
right.
So clearly intentional in 40 being like, hey, maybe I mix my drums a bit too knockin' for this type of record that should be dancey and light on its feet. Like, let's bring in someone else, not to fully do a makeover on this, but to co-mix it with me. And so it's obviously intentional, and I'm a sucker for any type of record. Thank you, Luca. Yes, thanks guys for in the chat. I'm a sucker for anything intentional, right? So if whether it's amazing or not, like someone that goes for a thing and does the thing, that's enough for me to mad respect. So, and I just happen to love the records that I've heard. I haven't listened down, and I want to. I actually am a huge Drake fan. Shamelessly, like,
you've been busy.
Fucking love. Exactly. Anyway, I'm stoked on it.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said about when someone takes a shot and does something ambitious. I just always love it, because I love hearing people, whether it ends up connecting with me emotionally or not. I would say this album is not really connecting with me emotionally, but it doesn't need to. I'm excited. It's the Evel Knievel. I enjoy the attempt. Get paid for the attempt, whether you execute it or not. I think sonically it's really interesting. I like Black Coffee and a few of the other producers on there doing really interesting stuff. It's interesting, an artist like Drake, who's now been at the top for so long. The culture is going to continue to change and evolve, and at some point he's the old guy who made hits 10 years ago. And so what does it look like for someone like Drake to get into his 30s, be a decade in, and still feel fresh? And that's an interesting challenge for everybody. I mean, the era that I grew up on, or in the music industry anyway, growing up on the records and the record makers were having, it was very much that, like, when 128 BPM pop songs, so Katy Perry and Pink and the Max Martin sort of one of Max Martin's peaks, and the Dr. Luke Max Martin thing, to see artists like Katy Perry and Pink and Kelly Clarkson, those artists, to see what happens when it's 5 or 6 or 10 years past their peak, and how they evolve. Someone like Beyonce, seeing what she's done, it's going to be interesting to see how Drake deals with all of this and what he does creatively.
Well, these artists don't have to make records anymore, right? They do it because they're true artists, and they have something to say and want to stay culturally relevant. So there's definitely some social capital in there too,
well, those are two different things too. There's I'm an artist and I have to make stuff. I mean, I feel like Kanye's got a bit of that, but then there's, like, you look at someone like Rihanna. Like, Rihanna hasn't put out a record in a while, just because she's doing all these other things. I do feel like someone like Drake is, I don't know him personally, but has the desire to be at the front of the culture. Like, part of the desire is like, I want to be relevant. I want to be doing the new cool shit. I get that impulse too, because I'm always like, what's new? What's pushing boundaries? Somebody makes a record that's really great, that sounds like something from 20 years ago. Doesn't interest me very much.
I mean, the best artists do it. The best artists co-sign other young artists that are doing something that they haven't done. Yeah. And they jump on it, and then they're seen as, hitting that mark. Like, Diplo is really great at it. Like, even Justin Bieber is amazing at it, jumping on artists. Like, he just did the Kid Leroy thing. Like, these are calculated moves to maintain relevancy, right? And I think, just thinking about the artist, come at it from the artist angle, up in Santa Barbara, one of my favorite movies that I randomly put on last night to show Niku because I love it, is the movie Chef with Jon Favreau.
I've never seen it.
Oh, really? Watch it. It's an extremely wholesome movie, but there's a moment where, he's like a rock star Michelin chef, and he's not the owner of this restaurant, so he has to cook the menu that the chef, that the owner wants him to cook. And he said there's the scene, I guess it's in the opening, is that he's about to cook for the biggest food critic and blogger in the city. It's Los Angeles. And he wants this, he's at the farmer's market and he's like, I'm going to just, redo this menu and give him something fresh, right? I've been cooking the same food over and over again, the same basic shit. And he gets stood up to by the owner. It's like, no, he's here to eat your food. The people are here to eat your food. Cook that menu, right? Cooks the menu, gets the worst review of his career. He takes it very, very personally, and he leaves the restaurant and goes on a hiatus and gets a food truck and starts doing his own thing, right? And it's a moment where Twitter is when the movie came out, the Twitter is on the scene, and like it's a whole social media. Like his son is on the truck and he's like tweeting for him where they're going to be with the new Cubano sandwich truck, and it's this whole discovery until I don't want to give a spoiler because you haven't seen it, but like there's a full circle of him doing what he wants from his, like, the early days of his cooking and his exploration into something new that is the reinvention of what all artists are supposed to do, right? Like, if you just keep giving the people what you've been giving them, like, some people will want that comfort and some people will fall off because you're not giving them anything new to taste. And I think Drake has been really great at doing both of those things. I think that's why it's so hard to hate him, which you kind of want, like, I don't know who's a better example than this, because like Kendrick is also one of those that people just kind of respect whatever he gives us, even though he gives us completely different things each time. There's got to be a better analog here that I'm not coming up with, but I'll revisit that at some point. I think the point is we want artists to surprise us. Otherwise we just go back to the records from before. It's how I always talk. We talk a lot about, like, I don't want something to sound like 1970s. Like, I'll go back and listen to a 70s record. Like, I don't want something to sound truly 1960s. I'm highly informed by the 60s sonically when it comes to my mixes, but I don't want it to be that dark. Like, it's not going to translate on a playlist next to Kid Laroi. Like, it's just not going to work next to Lil Nas or next to Drake. It's not going to be bright enough. So there is stuff we take, but we always want people to surprise us. And I think the surprising nature of music is what keeps things interesting. So I'm actually like thrilled that Drake did what he did. Yeah.
It makes me think, and I want to figure out how to say this in a way where friends of mine don't feel slighted by it, because I don't feel it it's not a judgment on anybody else, but there's a lot of new records coming out that sound like the pop punk that I made 15 years ago. I made with Eric Valentine or made by myself, lesser bands I played in. And some of it's very competent, and I also get that it's new to a new generation. And I've had some opportunities, and people have asked me if I want to work on that stuff, and it just doesn't interest me, because it sounds like things that have already been done, and it's not like total pastiche of like people are just making Blink-182 records or Good Charlotte or Taking Back Sunday or whatever, but like it just feels like old music to me, and it just doesn't interest me. And I don't know if I should try to undo or unreact to that in the way that I do, but I just like new shit. I want to hear people doing things I don't know how to do or haven't been done yet. And that's always what excites me about the production and sonics. That's what I care about. Song wise, I want something that would have been a hit 40 years ago, just something that makes me, a person singing a thing and I want to feel it. But in terms of production and mixing, I'm always trying to move forward. I just put up a clip on the Live with Matt Rad Instagram about, we talked, I don't know how long ago, about mixes getting darker, mixes changing. Like, that shit's just exciting to me. Just that people are doing different shit is always what's interesting to me. I don't know. It was just a short aside. People have asked me about a lot of that stuff.
I'm laughing inside because I completely agree, and I don't want to slight people too. I mean, it's funny when you posted
really great sounding stuff. Like, I'm not mad at
Totally. And I was thinking, like, the great Aaron Forbes. We've been texting a bit because he was just in Paris. He commented on that post that you sent about, like, Rob Kinelski, like, knowing the right time to leave Billie Eilish dark, and then change the game with it. And I was thinking, like, I agree, and I think those mixes sound incredible. I think Rob Kinelski killed those mixes, but like, I know a lot of people that were leaving things dark when it needed to be dark before that record. It just so happens Billie Eilish and helped change the game, right? Like, one could argue that, and I've been told this by big mixers, that the Khalid album was too dark for a pop R&B record. And I was like, okay, it was a #1 album and we had a top 5 hit song. So I'm not going to argue with you about it being dark, but it worked. So I like to think about things that work for whatever they are. And it has nothing to do with brightness, darkness. It's just about choices and, is the culture ready for it, right? And people get lucky with that balance. And I think what you're referring to is there's a movement, there's always a cycle movement in time. And we're now at the early 2000s when it comes to this, pop punk genre you're talking about that you kind of were with the guy on. So you got to see that happen. I would have loved to see, Tony Maserati, in Puff Daddy land and Biggie land, like at that time, right? And you got to experience that versus when I got to work with him, like he was still killing it and doing huge records, but he had already realized that doesn't work anymore. Would Eric Valentine go in now and make a pop punk record sound exactly the same as he did 20 years ago? Definitely not. He would try to move forward. Like people are in copy land right now. And I understand it. I think that it's nostalgic and it feels good, but you don't want to make it because you made it. I started mixing and producing bands like that on Long Island and hardcore bands and that kind of like that gnarliness, that, for lack of better terms. And now I want to make smooth R&B music and things that sound clean and good, right? So now when I think of a hybrid, I want to mix those records to sound just the right amount of polished and clean so that they sound like their own and have the bottom end of an R&B record. Like that's how I'm translating what you don't like about it. I'm like, well, if I had a chance to mix those records, I would mix them a bit more current sounding and a bit more knocking on the low end. And I've done a couple, and some of the pushback is like too much bottom end. It's like, all right, cool. Well, I took it that far. I did what I wanted to do. Well, now we can find a happy medium. It's still going to have more bottom end and more low end impact than those records had. So my question back to you would be, do you think there's a way to make that genre again, because you're kind of an expert in that genre, sound more like what you'd want music to sound like now, a bit more surprising? Because I think you could do it. I think you should, in a sense. I'm actually that you say you don't want to do it. I think you're saying that maybe for the wrong reasons, potentially.
Well, I'm confident I could do it. There's also people that are doing it. It's funny. It's like I want to shout out the people that are doing it well, but since it's in the context of me not really caring about the genre, I don't want to bum people out. Like it's not a slight on anyone. I'm just not interested in it. Like you know what it is I was talking about this with somebody recently. The things that I really, someone like Juice WRLD, one of the reasons I thought he was so amazing, and now folks like Leroy and they're taking those same melodies and attitudes and putting them over hip hop, putting them over acoustic guitar and beats, putting them over new combinations of things.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's exciting to me. That's
okay. That is.
And so,
okay. I'm just trying to go a little bit further into what you're talking about. Yes. Somebody just commented there, double yacht, exactly said it, and it's basically taking the old sound and then lazily modernizing by simply adding trap drums. And even like I don't think that's lazy. I don't think that's extremely intentional, because that's the drum machine du jour, and I don't think it's lazy at all. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that the timing of the guitars being a little more aggressive on top of that locked-in drum feel, and then them rapping on top of the beat creates a different feel. Yes, you could micro edit and go in and put it on grid and do the thing, but that's not what makes that sound have that angst, right? Like punk music was on top of the beat. I think they're actually doing it extremely authentically, and I don't find anything lazy about it.
Well, I don't know what I'm talking about at this point, because there's a whole spectrum of this stuff.
Juice WRLD, I know, but from the Juice WRLD.
I don't think they were talking about Juice WRLD. I think there's, again, I don't want to shout out the people, but like, I think Juice WRLD's doing it, or did it, all right, did it totally right. Like, listening to those records, they sound like he's well versed in Paramore and Blink and all these sorts of things, and yet also well versed in hip hop. And someone like XXXTentacion, another like huge loss creatively, musically, obviously a very complicated person. But there were people that grew up on these multiple genres and then making new things. Anyway, I just say that's the thing that's most exciting to me.
I like it. I like this conversation a lot because, as a mixer, as a producer, a lot of times you work on a song, maybe 2 on an album. And as a mixer, sometimes you get to work on 4 to 14, depending on, what producers and who's hiring you to do the mixing or the whole project. and a lot of albums are all over the place creatively, and people are complaining about it. And instead I'm like, well, that's the way it is, because kids are listening to a ton of genres and they want to make a ton of types of records, and I want to be the person at the end of the chain that makes it all sound like it makes sense to some degree. You know, I'm on a mix right now, you know, mix 3 of 5 on an EP, and this one sounds completely different than the first 2, and I'm like, hey, how do I tie this in? And the producer's like, yeah, I get it, I'm not sure how much it needs to tie into the other 2, and I'm like, whoa, you know, like, woo, that's crazy to my brain. But at the same time, like, who am I to say? Like, I'm going to try to do both of that, you know, both parts of that. I do want it to hang. I don't want it to jump out. I'm not going to treat every song on an EP like a single. I think that we should treat them like a project, cohesion. And, but am I right? I don't know. I have no full certainty that I am right or wrong in this matter. It's just the way it is right now. And people are influenced from a lot more than they had been in the past.
Yeah. And it is interesting you say it that way too, because I think a lot of people, I've made a lot of records with people who don't really pay attention to the cohesion of the project. And they would probably say it's not necessarily important to them, but that's also our job. It's our job to look out for that and fight for that. And, you know, it's sort of like, okay, you turned up the snare drum 1 dB in that one spot. Nobody's ever going to notice that, but people will feel it. It's one of the many details that's important about being a finisher, being a mixer, whatever, being a producer, where you don't have to hammer home, hey, everybody, it needs to be cohesive. You just figure out how to implement structures in place so that, you know, you're running through the same mix bus, or you got a similar vocal chain, or the vocal engineer is going to do a great job, or you try to make the low end sound similar in the songs that have different producers. But you know, that's really our job, whether you get literally told that or not. It's an important aspect of it.
And the truth of the matter is that the majority of artists I work with want cohesive projects.
Yeah. Whether they say it or not, they definitely want it.
A lot of them say it.
Yeah, for sure. And artists will say that more often than, say, an A&R person or whatever. But yeah, cohesion, and it's becoming increasingly important because people are realizing, like, and you see Drake doing it now, whatever, but like you see The Weeknd make a project that the whole thing flows together, or you see what Tyler's done with Harry, especially these last couple albums. Like, there's a cohesive identity that, because it's been scarce in the last decade, because everybody can work with 35 different producers for their album. When you hear an album or hear an EP or hear a series of singles that feel cohesive, people start to connect with an artist in a deeper way. It's almost like it's just undervalued in the music industry right now, so it's time to do it. Just like if you can figure out how to make effective, darker mixes, those things will stand out. I mean, my favorite example of this is Eric Valentine making Songs for the Deaf back in 2001, where, you know, Josh Homme came in and said, I don't want to use any of the shit that anybody else is using. They decided to use solid state amps when everybody else is using tube amps, super, super dry drums when everybody's making like cavernous sampled Chris Lord Algae, great sounding things. Those are obviously amazing, but like, you know, to go in and make something that's super dry and super dark, and the guitars don't have any tubeness on them. They're all these like weird solid state, and you listen to that album and it doesn't sound like anything else really before or since. When you go in with that kind of vision, even if you don't sell millions of records, people will connect to what you're doing in a different way. And if you do have a few songs that can go on the radio, then you know Harry Styles is going to do whatever he wants for decades. And it's a big part of that is because he goes, hey, I want to make a thing. I'm going to call my friends Tyler and Kid Harpoon, and we're going to go make stuff with my couple of friends, rather than being like, what's cool? What are we going to do? Who's doing the coolest thing? Who can I get to feature? Like, there just isn't any of that. It's a vision. So yeah, super undervalued right now.
And on that note, that's a great example, but that wasn't, from the inside, that wasn't the case. It was how do you break an artist that was in a boy band that you worked with? How do we give this person an identity? And the identity just happened to luckily be inside of him, right?
Well,
and anybody else on those records, you don't have a sure hit.
Totally.
Because he is so fucking cool. And the lyrics that he's adding to the process, that he, you know, obviously it's co-written with Team, but that dude has a thing to say. And I think that's, again, what separates. Same with Drake. Like, he just has such a perspective and confidence and knowing that he has something to say, and that's what winds up translating. It always has.
Yeah. I love the decision.
there's obviously throwaway dance lyrics in records and pop music that, someone just, gets lucky on because it's a crazy melody and it doesn't really matter. And like, I think that's, there's something smart about certain things that Max Martin has done in pop music where, he cuts out syllables and it doesn't really make any sense, but like phonetically it's so catchy. And like, there's so many ways in to make hits, right? But the one that stands the test of time forever is I have something to say. I have personality in my voice, and it's catchy and memorable, and the music doesn't distract from me. And that's the formula that works, and it's rare, it's lucky, and it only happens a few times in a generation.
Yeah, and it's just a little aside, if I can do my 30-second or minute monologue on hit songs, I think people don't realize, like, when you actually get to those culture-changing, timeless songs, the vast, vast, vast majority of them, by comparison to all of the singles and songs that do pretty well that are below it, the vast majority of the really huge cultural-changing songs are just some authentic, personal lyric about somebody's life.
Yes.
Even if it feels like it's, go listen to Party in the USA, which maybe you think is a throwaway song, or go listen to Share Believe, which is like a silly, like those are deep, heavy songs about loneliness and self-worth. And, there are big emotions behind these records that sometimes people might look at as frivolous if they don't really dig into it. But the reason they last is because there's something real and heavy about it. That's my hit song.
No, I love that. This has been a great catch up too.
There's like 5 really good, we could spend a half an hour questions that I wanted to get to. Really good ones from the Discord. The Discord put a bunch of great questions. I don't know if we can really.
Let's come back to it.
I
There's
feel like
also a jackhammer in the back now. I don't know how I'm going to mix with this thing happening, and I'm getting really distracted, and I think we had an amazing episode. So I might just want to call it right now. I'm really distracted by this jackhammer.
Do you want to give us 2 minutes on if you've continued to do less processing on your mix bus? There are a few people that have been watching your Just for the Record.
Oh yeah, I should plug
streams.
that. Just for the Record tomorrow. I have another one. So tune in tomorrow at noon for the most recent installment of Jon Mixes Live on Twitch at Just for the Record.
Any other quick thoughts on if you've been changing mix bus, minimizing things?
Yeah, I've been reintroducing on certain things, not on rap or hip hop, but on pop or acoustic music. I've been reinstantiating a slight amount of limiting on the mix bus and relying less heavy on the clipper. On hip hop, it's still the clipper gives me more punch and just more 808 and kick forwardness. Yeah. The limiter, I use the Ozone Maximizer. It just adds a width on pop that can't really. Which do you know which is it on modern? Yeah. Yeah, the ARC4, whatever the thing is, modern setting with a pretty fast release. Yep. In that character setting. And no more than a dB or 2. Like I'm not clamping. And then I'll use a clean Pro Q3 still to like get an extra dB or 2, and then a little bit of clipping. On pop stuff, on hip hop, I'm just going straight clipper, and between the fire, the clip, and the big clipper, depending on how it handles the low end. If I need more control over the low end, I will have to use the big clipper so I can use that band specific thing. Yeah. So that's important. The clip will crap out a bit earlier.
Sounds good. Well, people can watch tomorrow. Hey, Matt Beckley, thanks for joining with 1 minute left. Hey, a little clipper joke, Matt Beckley. Joke. Nicely done. Nice.
Good joke.
Well, it's a pleasure as always. We've had a couple of weeks off. It's nice to catch back up. I also, back next week. I think we might be off next week. Depends on the session. I'm waiting on a session. Okay. If not, the following week we will do it. I will be live from Hawaii at 9 a.m. Nice. So I'll be looking out at the ocean, I think. Cool. But always a pleasure to catch up. Love you, my friend. And I'll give you I need to give you a proper FaceTime so we catch up offline as well. Cool. Chat in a bit. But yeah.
Yes, please.
Good to see you, my friend. Thank you guys for watching as always.
Till next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.